What's the most bizarre rule your parents forced you to obey? Growing up, my parents beat it into us that loyalty was everything. If you ever told someone outside the family what happened in our house, you were a traitor, and traitors got punished. My mom would test us constantly, asking trick questions like whether we'd talked to a teacher that day or what we'd said to a friend. If she caught even the slightest hesitation, she'd make us kneel in the hallway for hours while she blasted the TV so loud the neighbors couldn't hear us crying. But my dad was worse. He made the rules. He decided how many hours we'd kneel in rice, whether we were allowed to sleep in beds, and even what we could eat. He'd watch us while we ate to make sure we didn't slip up and talk about something we weren't supposed to. I hated both of them, but I hated the rules even more. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, what was happening. But my sister, she was the exact opposite. She worshipped them. She memorized all the rules and repeated them back like a little soldier. If she ever overheard me whispering with a friend on the phone, she'd run to my parents, bragging about how she protected the family. She loved catching me. I'll never forget the smirk on her face when I got dragged out of bed one night and forced to stand in the backyard in the freezing cold because she told them I'd written in a diary. Over time, her loyalty paid off. They started praising her in front of me. Suddenly, she got dessert at dinner when I didn't. She got to sit on the couch while I sat on the floor. Eventually, she even got a real bedroom door while mine was taken off the hinges so they could monitor me. Meanwhile, my punishments kept getting worse. If I came home from school and forgot to repeat back every single thing I'd said that day, they'd take away food. If I hesitated during one of their truth checks, they'd lock me in the bathroom with the light off until morning. Then came the worst night. I was exhausted and desperate. After a brutal punishment, I thought maybe my sister wasn't as bad as I believed. Maybe she was just pretending to side with them because she was scared too. So I trusted her. I told her how much I hated it all, how badly I wanted out. I begged her to keep it between us. And that's how I made the biggest mistake of my life. Within minutes, my dad stormed in with his belt. I was forced to kneel while he whipped me, counting each strike out loud. I remember biting down so hard on my sleeve not to scream that my teeth left marks in the fabric. My sister stood in the doorway, grinning, nodding along with every hit like she was proud of him. That was the night I realized she wasn't pretending. She actually believed in everything they were teaching us. After that, I broke. I stopped writing in notebooks. I stopped talking to friends unless it was absolutely necessary. If they forced me to confess, I just made stuff up. But deep down, a small part of me still wanted to hold on to something private. So I started keeping a tiny folded note under my shoe. Just one sentence, reminding myself that none of this was normal. Of course, my sister found it. She ripped it out of my shoe and ran straight to my parents like she'd won the lottery. That night was hell. My dad smashed my phone against the wall. My mom screamed that I had betrayed the family. They wouldn't let me eat for 3 days. And as if that wasn't enough, they started making me sit in the living room 3 times a day to confess my secrets, while my sister sat beside them, ready to accuse me of lying at any moment. The last straw came when she did exactly that. In the middle of one of my forced confessions, she tilted her head, smiled, and called me a liar. My parents didn't hit me that time, but that single word, the way she said it, broke something inside me. I finally decided I couldn't survive there anymore. The very next day at school, I walked straight to my teacher and told her everything. I couldn't stop shaking. I remember her eyes going wide as I broke down, explaining every detail of what my parents did. She didn't say much, just got up and told me to wait in the counselor's office. Minutes later, I was sitting there, my heart pounding, waiting for my parents to arrive. The clock on the counselor's wall ticked so loudly it felt like it was mocking me. Each second stretched longer than the last, the air in the small office growing heavier with every click. My palms were sweaty, my weak arms were heavy, my fingers trembling against the fabric of the chair. I kept glancing at the door, half hoping they wouldn't show up at all, half dreading the moment they did. When the footsteps finally came, I knew immediately it was them. My mother's sharp heels struck the linoleum like gunshots, echoing down the hallway. Her voice followed, shrill and panicked, demanding answers before she'd even reached the office. My stomach twisted. The door swung open hard enough to rattle the frame. My mom rushed in first, her perfume hitting me before she did. Sweet, suffocating, familiar. She plastered on a mask of worry, eyebrows drawn together, mouth trembling in fake concern. She reached out like she wanted to hug me, but my body betrayed me before I could think. I recoiled, pressing back into the chair as if I could sink into it. Her hand froze midair. I caught the counselor, Miss Patel, watching closely. Her expression didn't change much, but her eyes sharpened. She noticed. She was taking mental notes. My dad appeared in the doorway next. Unlike my mom, he didn't rush. He walked in calm, measured, hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed. To anyone else, he would have looked like the picture of a reasonable, worried parent. But I knew that stillness. That quiet was never good. It was the calm right before he snapped. And of course, my brother was with them. He lingered just behind Dad, peeking around with wide eyes, feigning innocence. But I knew that look too. His gaze darted around the room like he was already calculating how this would play out, where he could insert himself, how he could twist the knife just a little deeper. "Please have a seat," Miss Patel said, gesturing to the chairs across from me. Her voice was calm, firm, practiced, the kind of tone you couldn't easily argue with. The chairs creaked as my parents sat down. My mom's lips curled into a sugary smile. "What's this about?" she asked, tilting her head with false confusion. Her voice dripped honey, but I could hear the steel underneath. My brother stayed standing, arms crossed, leaning against the wall. He didn't even glance at me. Miss Patel didn't waste time. She spoke clearly, clipboard balanced on her lap. "Your child has shared some troubling information about certain practices at home that involve physical punishment." My mom's face shifted instantly, like a switch had flipped. Shock, indignation, outrage, all painted on in perfect order. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "We would never hurt our children." "We love them," I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and forced the words out. "The rice." My voice was barely above a whisper. You made me kneel on rice. The silence that followed was heavy. My dad stepped in then, his voice calm, reasonable, the one he used with teachers and neighbors. There must be some misunderstanding, he said smoothly. She's been having behavioral issues lately. She tends to exaggerate things for attention. We're strict, yes, but we're not abusive. That voice. That calm, steady voice. It made my skin crawl. I clenched my fists. It's not exaggeration. I have marks. On my knees. On my back. My voice wavered, but I pushed through. Louder this time. Miss Patel nodded, flipping a page on her clipboard. The school nurse has already documented these injuries. She read from the report, her tone matter-of-fact, clinical. I saw my parents exchange a quick glance, just a flicker, but I knew what it meant. They were regrouping, aligning their story. Dad leaned forward, spreading his hands open in that same fake gesture of honesty. Kids get bruises all the time, he said. We're concerned she's making up these stories. I cut him off. My voice cracked, but I forced it out. I didn't eat for 3 days. Because I wrote a note to myself. The words hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. The room went silent. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the relentless ticking of the clock. My brother shifted on the wall, arms tightening across his chest. For once, he didn't look smug. He looked nervous. My mom snapped back first. That's a lie. A complete lie. We had dinner together last night. She turned sharply, eyes wide as she stared at my brother. It wasn't a question. It was a command. And just like always, he obeyed. Yeah, he said quickly. We did. Mom made lasagna. His voice was steady, almost practiced. They'd rehearsed this before, spinning perfect little family moments out of thin air. The injustice of it burned inside me. I clenched my nails so hard into my palms that I felt the sting of skin breaking. I ate at the counter. Alone. You didn't even look at me. My words came out through gritted teeth. Dad's mask slipped just a fraction, his face hardening. His voice was still calm, but there was an edge now. This is getting out of hand. We're taking her home. We'll sort this out as a family. He pushed back his chair, the leg screeching against the floor. That word, family, landed like a threat. Miss Patel stood immediately, her voice firm, unshakable. That won't be possible today. I've already contacted Child Protective Services. They'll be here shortly to speak with all of us. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. My mom's fake smile dropped, her lips flattening into a thin line. Dad's jaw flexed, the vein in his temple twitching. My brother straightened against the wall, eyes narrowing. And me? My chest tightened, heart racing so loud it drowned everything else out. Something was about to happen, something big. Then came the knock at the door. It was sharp, official, final. Everyone turned at once. The door opened and in walked a woman in a navy blazer with a notebook in hand. I'm Marissa Wilson with Child Protective Services, she introduced herself, her tone clipped but professional. Behind her, a uniformed officer stepped in, his presence filling the room. His badge glinted under the fluorescent light. My breath caught in my throat. Marissa Wilson's presence filled the room instantly. Calm, collected, but with an edge that told me she'd seen battles like this before. The officer didn't even have to say a word. His mere presence pressed against everyone like a weight. My mom, of course, was the first to move. She stood so quickly her chair screeched against the tile. Thank God you're here, she blurted, rushing forward like she was the victim. Her hands fluttered dramatically in the air. Our daughter is clearly very unwell. She's been telling all kinds of stories. I'm sure we can sort this out quickly, but Marissa didn't even flinch. She calmly raised a hand, palm outward. Please sit down, Mrs. Mitchell. We're here to gather facts, not opinions. The sharpness in her tone stunned even my mother. For the first time in my life, I saw Mom hesitate. Dad, on the other hand, stayed seated, his posture perfectly composed, a mask of controlled patience. He looked at Marissa like he was the reasonable one, as if the entire room was already on his side. We'll cooperate fully, of course. We just want what's best for our daughter. Those words cut through me like a blade. Best for me? If best meant kneeling until my knees bled, if best meant starvation, humiliation, and bruises, then yeah, maybe he was telling the truth. Marissa's gaze swept the room before landing on me. Her eyes were steady, soft, but unyielding. Why don't we start with you? She asked gently. Tell me what's been happening at home. I opened my mouth, but the words got stuck in my throat. My parents' eyes pinned me like daggers. My brother leaned in from the wall, eyes narrowed, a smirk tugging at his lips. Not the obvious kind this time, but the subtle one, the kind only I would notice. The one that said, go ahead, I dare you. See what happens. The silence stretched too long. My heart thundered in my chest. Miss Patel spoke softly, giving me a small nod. It's okay. You can speak freely here, and that broke something open. My words spilled out, trembling, messy, unstoppable. They punish me. They make me kneel on rice for hours. They take away food. My voice cracked, tears burning at my eyes. They make me confess everything. Even things I didn't do. I didn't look at my parents. I couldn't. Marissa's pen scratched across her notebook, her face calm, unreadable. But my mom exploded. That is outrageous, she screamed. her voice breaking like glass. She is lying. She has always been a liar. Karen. My dad's voice cut through hers, sharp and low. His eyes never left Marissa as he said it, but I saw his hand clench on the armrest of his chair. His patience was cracking. Enough, Marissa said, her voice slicing through the noise. I'll be speaking with each of you separately. Officer Torres will remain in the room for safety. Until then, you will stay seated. The word safety hung in the air like poison. For once, it wasn't me being accused. It was them. My brother finally spoke, his voice careful, smooth. She makes things up. I've seen her do it. She hates following the rules. He paused, then looked at Marissa with wide, innocent eyes. Sometimes I worry about her. It was like a dagger in my chest. He didn't just throw me under the bus. He backed over me and smiled while doing it. But this time, Marissa didn't write it down. Instead, she turned her sharp gaze on him. Thank you. I'll hear from you later. And for the first time, I saw it. A flicker of unease on his face. His smirk faltered. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Then Marissa stood, notebook in hand. We're going to conduct interviews one by one. Starting with you, she said, looking at me. Come with me. My stomach dropped. Relief tangled with terror. I glanced at Miss Patel, who gave me the smallest encouraging smile. Then I stood, my legs shaking beneath me. As I followed Marissa toward the door, I felt it, the weight of my family's eyes on my back. My mother's burning with betrayal, my father's calculating cold, and my brother's. His were the worst of all, because he wasn't angry, he wasn't scared, he was smiling again. A smile that told me this was far from over. The hallway felt colder than the office, like the air itself knew something heavy was about to happen. My footsteps echoed faintly against the linoleum, each one reminding me I was walking further away from my family, if only for a few minutes. Marissa guided me into a smaller conference room. The blinds were half drawn, leaving stripes of sunlight across the table. It smelled faintly of pencil shavings and disinfectant. She closed the door gently behind us, then pulled out a chair for me. Sit wherever you're comfortable, she said. Comfortable. The word almost made me laugh. I hadn't been comfortable in years. I sat stiffly, folding my hands in my lap to keep them from trembling. She took the chair across from me, notebook open, pen poised, but her eyes never left my face. You don't have to be afraid, she said softly. This is your chance to tell your side, and I'll listen. No interruptions. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent light above us. Then it all came out, like floodgates breaking. I told her about the rice, the belt, the forced confessions, the silent meals. I told her how they made me feel invisible one day and a punching bag the next. My throat burned, but I didn't stop. The words had been bottled up so long they spilled like poison. She didn't interrupt, not once. Just wrote, nodded occasionally, her expression unreadable but not cold. When I finally ran out of breath, I felt hollow, like I'd just carved pieces of myself out and laid them on the table for her to examine. Thank you, she said finally, her voice calm but steady. That was very brave. Brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt like I'd just signed my own death warrant. She glanced at her notes, then leaned in slightly. Has anyone else seen these punishments? Neighbors, relatives, friends? My heart clenched. I thought of Mrs. Dawson, our next-door neighbor, who sometimes peeked through her blinds when the shouting got too loud, of the muffled conversations that would suddenly cut off whenever I stepped into a room, of my aunt, who once saw the bruises on my arm but said nothing except, "Your parents are strict, but it's for your own good." They all looked away, I whispered. They always look away. Marissa wrote something quickly, then closed her notebook. I believe you, she said, but this won't be easy. They'll fight back. They'll try to twist your words, maybe even turn people against you. I need you to prepare for that. Her eyes locked on mine, and for the first time I saw it, something fierce behind her calm. She wasn't just going through the motions. She cared. The door creaked open slightly. Officer Torres poked his head in. Time, he said. Dad's getting restless. Restless, that was one word for it. Marissa gave me a reassuring nod. I'll be back soon. Stay here for now. The door shut again, leaving me in that striped sunlight. My heartbeat refused to slow. I hugged my knees to my chest and waited. Through the thin wall, I could hear faint voices. My mother's shrill protests, my father's smooth lies, my brother's carefully crafted performance. It all blended into a storm on the other side of the wall. I pressed my palms over my ears, but the words still seeped in. She's unstable. We love her. She makes things up all the time. Then silence, heavy, dangerous. Minutes later, the door opened again, but it wasn't Marissa who stepped in. It was Miss Patel, her face pale. Come with me, she said quietly. Now. My stomach dropped. What's happening? She glanced down the hallway before answering. Your parents are insisting on taking you home tonight. CPS wants to place you in temporary care, but there's complication. Complication? My voice cracked. Miss Patel hesitated, then sighed. They brought their lawyer. It felt like ice water poured down my spine. Of course they did. She led me back toward the main office where the scene had shifted into something worse. My parents were no longer pretending to be cooperative. Their lawyer, a tall man in an expensive suit with sharp cheekbones and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, was already in the room, flipping through paperwork like he owned the place. "Mr. Brennan," Marissa said firmly, "you're not supposed to be here during initial intake." He smiled, smooth and dangerous. "And yet, here I am. My clients have rights." Dad leaned back in his chair, smug, while Mom dabbed at fake tears with a tissue. My brother leaned against the wall again, arms crossed, eyes flicking to me with triumph. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was war. Marissa's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. "Then we'll take this to the judge. Tonight, Judge." The word hung in the air like thunder. For a moment, no one moved. Then Mr. Brennan snapped his briefcase shut. "Fine, let's do that." And just like that, the school office turned into the staging ground for something much bigger than I'd ever imagined. Miss Patel gave me a quick, worried glance. "Stay close," she whispered. Because the night wasn't over. Not even close. Melissa took me to her office, which was 5 minutes away. Then she called someone on the phone and started explaining the situation. I assumed it was a lawyer, but I didn't understand why would a CPS worker fight this case with her own lawyer and money. When she finished the phone call, I asked her who it was, and she confirmed that it was her lawyer and that she was about to send her the evidence through email. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Why are you doing this?" My voice cracked in the dark. "You could have just written your report and left." "Most people do." For a moment, she didn't answer. Then quietly. "Because someone once left me behind." My breath caught. "When I was your age," she continued, "things weren't so different. Different house, different faces, but the same fear. Same bruises no one wanted to see. A caseworker came once. She asked questions. She even wrote things down. But when my parents smiled and spun their stories, when the neighbors swore we were a perfect family, that caseworker closed the file." Her jaw tightened, and she never came back. I stared at her, stunned. "I promised myself I'd never be that person," Marissa said, voice low but fierce. "So when I see someone like you, I don't just see a case. I see the girl I used to be, and I refuse to leave her behind again." The words hit me harder than any belt ever had. A lump formed in my throat. No one had ever said something like that to me. No one had believed me like that. I wanted to ask more, but she was busy with the evidence, and I didn't want to bother her even more. I was so tired from all of this that I fell asleep on her office chair. 3 hours later, Melissa woke me up, telling me it's time to go. The ride to the courthouse was a blur of headlights and nerves. Officer Torres drove, his eyes fixed on the road, his silence grounding the chaos. I sat in the back beside Marissa, the leather seat cold against my arms. Melissa held her notebook on her lap, pen tucked neatly inside. She hadn't said much since leaving the office, but her presence was a shield. When we arrived, the air was thick with disinfectant and tension. It was late, but the emergency docket was alive with murmurs, heels clicking on tile, doors opening and closing in sharp bursts. We were ushered into a small courtroom. The judge sat already at the bench, gray-haired, tired-eyed, his gavel resting within easy reach. My parents and their lawyer swept in like they owned the place. Mom clutched her tissue box like a prop, Dad wore that calm mask again, and Mr. Brennan carried his briefcase as though it contained the truth itself. Marissa stood a little taller beside me, but I noticed the subtle shift in her stance when Brennan smirked in her direction. This wasn't the first time they'd clashed. The judge looked around the room, his tone clipped. "We're here for an emergency custody review. The child in question will remain present. Each party will state their case. I don't want theatrics. I want facts." Of course, theatrics were exactly what my parents gave. Brennan painted them as devoted parents dealing with a troubled child. "She's imaginative," he said smoothly, "but her accusations are baseless. These are the growing pains of adolescence twisted into falsehoods." My mother nodded furiously, dabbing at tears. "She's our baby," she sobbed. "We'd never harm her. She's confused." I wanted to scream, but my voice was stuck behind my ribs. Then Marissa stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry or plead. She laid out my words, the nurse's notes, the counselor's observations. She drew a picture so clear it couldn't be ignored. But Brennan was sharp. He poked holes, demanded hard evidence, painted me as unstable. And for a while, I could see the judge wavering, torn between two realities. That's when Marissa did something that stunned even me. She pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, then set it on the evidence table. "I know this isn't procedure," she said carefully, "but I've retained counsel of my own. This case has escalated beyond intake, and I refuse to let it be bulldozed by intimidation." The doors opened and a woman walked in. Tall, commanding, her suit plain but powerful. She carried no briefcase, just a single folder in her hand. "This is Attorney Claire Donovan," Marissa said, her voice steady. "She'll be representing my motion to block immediate custody return." Brennan scoffed. "This is irregular." The judge cut him off. "So is a midnight custody battle. Let her speak. Claire opened the folder and, with a calm authority, dismantled Brennan's performance piece by piece. She cited cases, precedents, loopholes he thought he owned. She didn't just defend me. She went on the attack, questioning their fitness, pointing out contradictions in their statements, spotlighting the bruises documented by the nurse. Watching Brennan falter was like watching a predator stumble for the first time. When Claire finished, the courtroom was silent. The judge leaned back, rubbing his temple. Then slowly, he said, "Temporary custody will remain with CPS until a full hearing is scheduled. The child will not return home tonight." My mom gasped like she'd been stabbed. My dad's mask cracked. Just for a second, rage bleeding through. My brother's eyes locked on me, narrowed into daggers. But me, for the first time in forever, I felt air fill my lungs without burning. The gavel came down, decision made. That night, Marissa didn't take me to some stranger's house like I expected. Instead, she drove me to her own apartment. "It's not protocol," she admitted as she unlocked the door, "but I'm not letting them get to you tonight. They're furious, and I don't trust them not to try something." Her apartment was small, lived in, but warm. There were books stacked on the coffee table, a blanket draped over the couch, and a faint smell of chamomile tea. I stood frozen in the doorway, the strangeness of being somewhere safe pressing down on me harder than fear ever had. "You can sleep on the couch," she said gently. "Bathroom's down the hall. I'll grab you some blankets," I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of falling asleep. The next morning, the world felt different. Marissa was already on the phone, her voice clipped, focused. She was speaking to Claire, the lawyer. Papers were spread across the kitchen table, and for a second I wondered if this was what war looked like. Coffee mugs, stapled files, a woman scribbling notes like her life depended on it. When she hung up, she turned to me. "The judge scheduled the full custody hearing in 2 weeks. That means we have time to prepare, but also time for them to push back." My stomach dropped. Push back how? Her answer came sooner than I thought. That afternoon, while we were at Claire's office, a black car parked across the street. I saw them through the window, my dad in the driver's seat, my mom in the passenger, both staring straight at us. My skin crawled. "They're trying to rattle you," Claire said when she noticed me watching. Her voice was calm, but her jaw was tight. "Don't look at them. Don't give them the satisfaction," but I couldn't stop. My mom's lips moved silently through the glass. Even from across the street, I could read it. Liar. Traitor. I flinched, looking away. Claire stood then, pulling the blinds shut. "This is what they'll do for the next 2 weeks. Threats, intimidation, fake stories. We have to be ready." The days blurred together after that. School was out of the question. I couldn't go back, not with my brother there. So Marissa kept me close, bringing me along to her office or letting me help around her apartment. She didn't treat me like a case. She treated me like a person. One night, over microwaved pasta, I finally asked her the question that had been gnawing at me. "Why pay for a lawyer yourself? Don't you get one through CPS?" She set down her fork, looking at me with steady eyes. "Because the state lawyer has 20 cases just like yours. Brennan would eat them alive. Claire isn't just good, she's ruthless. And she's my friend, your friend." Marissa nodded. "We met years ago." I told her what happened to me as a kid. She told me if I ever needed her, really needed her, she'd show up. This is me calling in that promise. Her words made my chest ache in a way I couldn't name. Someone keeping a promise, that was new. The threats didn't stop. A week before the trial, a letter showed up at Marissa's door. No stamp, no return address. Just shoved under the mat. Inside was a photo of me, taken from across the street when we left Claire's office. On the back, written in my dad's blocky handwriting, were 4 words: "You can't hide forever." I dropped it the second I read it, my hands shaking. Marissa picked it up, her face pale but her voice steel. "They're getting desperate." "That's good. Desperate people make mistakes." She snapped a photo of it on her phone. "This goes straight to Claire." For the first time, I saw anger in her, not just the quiet, steady kind, but a fire that scared me and comforted me at the same time. "You're not alone in this," she said firmly. "Not anymore." The morning of the trial came too fast. Marissa woke me early before the sun was even up. She handed me a plain shirt and dark pants she'd picked out. "Simple," she said. "The judge doesn't care about style. He cares about truth," but my hand still shook as I buttoned the shirt. My chest felt tight. On the way to the courthouse, none of us spoke much. Officer Torres drove again, his steady silence grounding the nerves. Claire sat in the passenger seat, flipping through a thin folder. Marissa sat next to me, her hand resting on the armrest, close enough that if I reached out, I could touch it. I didn't. But the closeness was enough. When we pulled up, my heart nearly stopped. My parents were already there, standing on the courthouse steps like they owned the place. My mom had her tissue box clutched in one hand, my dad's arm tight around her shoulders. My brother was with them, eyes locked on me like a weapon. I froze. Marissa leaned closer, her voice low. "Eyes forward. Don't give them your fear." Inside, the courtroom was larger than last time. Wooden benches, high ceilings, the air heavy with silence. The judge from before sat at the bench, glasses perched low on his nose. He looked more awake this time, but no less serious. "All rise," the clerk called. The sound of everyone standing made my knees weak. The trial began. Brennan, my parents' lawyer, went first. He wasted no time painting me as unstable. He said I was a troubled teen lashing out at her parents' structure. He called my bruises accidents, my words stories. He even tried to pull out old school records, times I had missed class, times I'd gotten detention, as if that proved I was lying. My stomach twisted. Every word felt like poison dripping into the judge's ears. Then it was Claire's turn. She didn't shout. She didn't flinch. She stood steady, her voice calm but sharp like a knife. "This case is not about a rebellious child," she said. "This case is about control. About fear. And about a home that is not safe." One by one, she laid out the evidence. Photos of the bruises, statements from the nurse, notes from the counselor. She even had a copy of the letter, the one my dad had slipped under Marissa's door. She held it up for the judge to see. "Tell me," she said, turning to my parents, "what kind of loving father sends this to his daughter?" My dad's jaw clenched. My mom cried harder, dabbing her eyes like it would erase the words. The judge frowned, leaning forward. For the first time, Brennan looked unsure. Then came the hardest part. My testimony. When Claire called me to the stand, my legs almost gave out. I sat down, my palms sweaty against the wooden armrest. The clerk swore me in, and suddenly every eye in the room was on me. "Take your time," Claire whispered before stepping back. So I told them. I told them about the rules, the punishments, the way my brother betrayed me, the way my parents smiled in public and snapped in private. My voice shook, cracked, but I kept going. I talked about the night Marissa came, about how scared I was, about how my mom's last words to me were liar, traitor. At some point, I realized tears were streaming down my face. I wiped them away, forcing myself to look at the judge. "I'm not confused," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm not making it up. I just want to be safe." The room was silent. Even Brennan didn't have anything to say for a long moment. When the arguments ended, the judge leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The silence stretched forever. Then, finally, he spoke. "This court finds that returning the child to her parents would pose a risk of further harm. Custody is awarded to CPS. Placement with Ms. Rivera will continue until further review. Parents' visitation rights are suspended until proof of counseling and compliance is shown." The gavel hit. Decision made. My mom wailed like someone had died. My dad's face went dark with rage. My brother's glare burned into me like fire. But Marissa's hand was suddenly on mine, grounding me, steadying me. When we walked out into the light, for the first time, I felt like maybe I wasn't walking into a trap. Maybe I was walking into a life. That was 5 months ago. My parents were charged with child endangerment and emotional abuse. It wasn't the kind of case that ends with prison bars clanging shut, not right away. The judge gave them 18 months of probation, mandatory counseling, and parenting classes. They also lost custody rights indefinitely. It didn't feel like enough. A part of me wanted them to rot in a cell. But another part, maybe the tired part, was just relieved I didn't have to go back. My brother stayed with them. I don't know if he ever realized what he did to me or if he still thinks of me as the villain. I stopped trying to guess. I live with Marissa now. It started as temporary placement, but somewhere along the way, it became home. Her apartment is small, a little noisy from the neighbors, but it's ours. She even cleared a shelf in her bookcase for my things. I switched schools too. The first week was hard. I flinched whenever a teacher raised their voice, and I sat at the back of every class. But over time, the panic eased. Nobody here knows me as the liar or the troublemaker. I'm just me. And for the first time, that feels like enough. Some days are still heavy. I wake up from dreams where I'm back in my old house, back at that dinner table, rice in front of me and silence pressing in. But then I hear Marissa making coffee in the kitchen, humming under her breath, and I remember I'm safe. Sometimes after school, I even help her at the office. Not with big things, just filing papers, answering the phone, bringing kids snacks while they wait for their meetings. There was this one girl, maybe 10 years old, who came in last week. She wouldn't talk to anyone, wouldn't look up from her shoes. I sat next to her on the couch, handed her a cookie, and said quietly, "It's okay." I know how scary it feels, she looked at me then. Just a glance. But it was enough. Marissa noticed, and later she told me, "You're good at this." Better than you realize, maybe she's right. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if my parents will ever change, or if my brother will ever forgive me, or if I'll ever forgive him. But I do know this. I'm not that kid trapped at the table anymore. I'm not invisible, and I'm not alone. And for now, that's enough.